Everyone, once again, my name is Marek. I will be the moderator for today. And uh, the plan for today is really straightforward. First up, we have a little word on UXtweak for those of you who do not know about us yet. And then Kevin, our guest for today, will speak about the innovations in the strategic research. And after the presentation is done, we'll have a live Q&A with Kevin. So please be more than welcome to ask any questions in the chat about the topic that we will be discussing today. We will be gathering these questions and answering them in the Q&A session at the end. So what about the UXtweak that I mentioned? UXtweak, why would you choose us as your platform? So first of all, we are a UX research platform, a all-around UX research platform, which enables you to test all the aspects of your product, from organizing your content with card sorting and tree testing, getting to know your participants and users more with our preference tests, 5-second tests, surveys, and session recordings. If you want to test usability, we got you covered as well with our mobile app testing, prototype testing, website testing, and first click tests. And we also have live interviews if you want to chat with your users, if you want to moderate any of the study types that I just mentioned, you can use our live interviews for that. And speaking of live interviews, we have a fresh release of an update for live interviews. Highlight reels are here. So as of now, you can create highlight reels from highlights in the interviews that you are creating in UXtweak directly in the platform without the need of use of any external video editing app. You can include lead-ins in your highlights to provide context before the highlight is played, and then the reel is generated for you, and you can export it in an MP4 format for your presentation. Also, UXtweak is not just a research platform. We are happy to be your recruiting partner as well, with our panels always guaranteeing the quality of the participants. If any participants do not meet your standards, we provide replacements. You can recruit for any study type that we have available on our platform. Our panels basically cover the whole world. And finally, we are always focused on providing fair incentives to our participants. But enough about UXtweak. Let me introduce our guest for today, Kevin. Hi, Kevin. How are you doing today?
Hey, Marek. Good. Glad to be here. And thank you so much for having me.
It's been a pleasure. It's always pleasure chatting with you. And with your background and your experience, I think that anyone who joins today is sure to learn something. So, as far as I know, you studied at both UC Berkeley and Bentley University, your bachelor's and master's degrees. You focused on psychology at Berkeley, other than among other topics. So, did you choose the UX as a career before choosing the school, or was that the choice that you made afterwards?
That's a great question. It was a discovery that I made after I graduated. I had no idea the two letters UX even existed when I was still in college. So I'm happy that I stumbled upon it.
Okay, and then you from Berkeley, you also went to a Stanford, which is a great experience for sure. Any points from there which are worth mentioning, or like
Yeah,
highlights?
yeah. I when I was at Stanford, I was doing research. I didn't go to school at Stanford because Berkeley and Stanford has a rivalry, so they would not like that if they found out. But uh, both great universities. I worked in the lifespan development lab at Stanford University with Laura Carstensen, who's amazing. If you're ever interested in aging psychology, definitely check out some of her talks on LinkedIn talks as well. It felt very surreal getting to sit next to a superstar in the field. So every time I sat in the meetings, I was like, oh, I'm not worthy. So, but I learned a lot working on that lab.
Yeah, I bet. That sounds amazing. And then after you finished your university stints, you went into the well, basically in the employment. And I noted that you worked for Volkswagen as well as Google and also Uber Freight. So any highlights that you would like to mention from that? Because working at Google is really cool.
That's a great question. And in fact, in the presentation today, I'm going to share two stories, one from Google and one from Uber Freight
Okay, so no
as
spoilers
well.
then. No
So
spoilers.
I'll leave it. I'll leave it a little
Yeah.
teaser right there.
And finally, your own platform, Zero to UX, which enables people to learn from the very, very basics of the UX all the way to a proficient UX. So that's a great thing. What was the motivation behind creating a platform like this on your own?
That's so. Thank you for that question. And Zero DX is something that I accidentally started. I never intended to start teaching, or I never intended to start making YouTube videos. But when I was in the UX field, I got a lot of questions and I took on a lot of mentees, and I realized that I could help on a larger scale. And so I made my first YouTube video. I called it How I Became a UX Researcher. And for those of you who've seen the video, thank you for watching, by the way. But just so you know, that video came out 1 year after the first time I tried to record it. Because the first time I recorded that video, I hated myself. I hated listening to myself. And that original video is buried deep in my archives. So no one will ever see that video. But the inspiration was, I knew the struggle. I've been through the struggle, and through lots of learning and also achievements, I wanted to share and give back to help people get into this field, which I believe is so necessary for so many companies to take on.
Yeah. So, as a Bob Ross would say, a happy little accident.
Happy
Yeah.
little accident. Yep.
Yeah, that's lovely. So I won't stop you anymore because I am sure that people are already pumped for your presentation. So the floor is yours, Kevin, and let's get into it. I'm already looking forward to it.
Thank you, Merrick. Thank you so much. All right. And hello, live stream. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. If you're joining from wherever, feel free to put in the chat where you're calling from. That would be awesome to see all the familiar names and also new names. But anyway, my name is Kevin Liang. I am the founder, educator, instructor, and pretend astronaut at Zero 2X. And a little slight title change to my talk today. As I was working on the talk, I felt, I think driving strategy in reactive environments encaps what I'm going to share today. So that's the topic. We're going to be talking about creating the proactive environment that you need when you might be really busy in reactive environments. So I checked the meetup this morning and it said 201 new members for the first time. That's awesome. I just want to say hello. And I will give a little intro to myself. I know Merrick already did, but I have a couple of slides. Like Merrick mentioned, I went to Cal, I worked at Stanford. These are some of the companies that I've worked at, that have the privilege of working at, on great teams. They're on alphabetical order, so nothing's more important than the other. because I learned very different lessons at each one of these. And today I'll share some stories from some of these companies that I've worked at. Nowadays, I have gone fully into coaching and teaching. I fell in love with it and started 0-UX. Feel free to check it out, 0-UX.com. And it's essentially a training program, a coaching program, but also, believe it or not, it acts as an agency, a research agency. And some of our clients have been these companies. Very cool. I have my graduates partner with some of these clients to work on real projects. And a lot of my graduates are now like senior level researchers, which I'm really proud of them for doing. And so I'll talk a little bit more about the masterclass that I've been working on, but I spent 4 years on it. But if you stay to the end, I'll give you all special code and some free goodies as well to give you on your UX research journey. Outside of UX research, you might be wondering, oh, what does Kevin do? Nothing. No, just I'm a space nerd. I have like a little NASA cup. Actually, one of my students gave it to me. I'm a huge space nerd. I saw the solar eclipse twice now, and I plan to chase them for the rest of my life. Also, cats. When I'll speak of Merrick before this call, my cat Harry came on the table, so you might see him as a guest speaker soon. I'm also a big fan of cars, and I recently took up learning how to drift. If you're bored of me talking about UX, I also made a video on car stuff. So if you're ever interested in that, you can check it out. And then finally, huge food person, especially little snacks shaped like animals. So that's a little bit about what I do outside of UX. Now, let's get into my goal for today. My goal for today is to talk about some of the principles that exist around research today, inspire a respect for the craft of research and not the labels. We can call something tactical or strategic, but I want us to love all types of research. And then finally come back down to earth and give you practical advice. And by the end, I hope you'll be able to take away how to shift strategy at any level with any research. So I'll break it down, some of the chapters today. To achieve these goals, I'll talk about definitions, the principles versus the practice, a story from my Google, how to actually inject strategy when you're working in reactive environments, how strategic research works, and we'll end it with some takeaways. And then if you stay to the end, I'll have some bonus goodies for you. But let's get started. In the title of my talk, I have strategic research, tactical research. But what does it mean? I want to define these things first. And let's take a step back even further, because there's a lot of terms. I'm sure you've seen these terms before: generative, discovery, evaluative, formative, tactical, need finding. So many terms, and you've probably heard even more variations of different research types. When I saw these, when I was learning, I was confused. I'm going to, for simplicity's sake, try to bucket all of these terms into two main ones. The terminology I'm going to be using today in today's talk is strategic research and tactical research. See, a card sorting exercise. So strategic, I'm just going to lump anything that's long-term foundational research, and we're going to use the term strategic today. Are we okay with that? All right. And then on the other side, we have tactical. This is very evaluative. You probably know this as usability testing, A/B testing, summative testing. Okay. And this is how I'm going to lump it up. Now, very briefly, what is strategic research? It focuses on bigger pictures, how the user experience aligns with business goals, long-term business and product strategy. Like tactical research, which addresses mainly specific design questions, testing a feature, usability. So strategic research digs deep into user needs, motivations, to inform decisions to shape future direction of product roadmaps. Okay, it's a very holistic systems approach. Cool. So we have the definitions down. Now we can start with the talk. First chapter. I'm going to show you 3 quotes, 3 beliefs or principles that I've seen today. And today I'm going to try to determine whether these statements are useful mantras for us or not. And for the next 3 slides, I'd like you, I don't know if we could run the poll on the live stream, but I'd like you to just say if you agree or disagree with these statements. Okay. And by the end of today's discussions, we'll have a more mindful approach to these principles. Are you ready? Okay. The first statement is tactical research is for juniors. Agree or disagree? Just put it in the chat. There's no wrong answer here. I just want to see what people feel today. Second statement. This is from Jared Spool, also a big UX leader in the field. 10% of research today is strategic, but it should be 85%. Agree or disagree? Just put it in the chat. And then the link I'll put on the screen. Strategic research is more important than tactical research. The reasoning behind this is because it doesn't focus on products, it focuses on people's experiences. And if we were to start with strategic research, we would build the right things for the right people the right way. So I might have primed you too much, but just give me a quick agree or disagree here too. In principle, this sounds great. I agree with the mantra here. I personally agree. Strategic research is important because you don't have to waste time rebuilding products. What happens, I'm going to show you an example of what happens if you were to just focus on tactical questions. And if you've seen my talks before, you know I love using a specific example. Now, raise your hand if you've ever seen this example. This is Juicero. You can call me a Juicero hater. But basically, this was a San Francisco-based startup. It raised $120 million in venture capital. It was a Wi-Fi enabled, voice controlled, sleek, sexy looking product. And just 4 years in, it failed because they built a Wi-Fi enabled, voice controlled, sleek, sexy looking, polished turd. Yeah. Guess how much this machine costs? $700. I don't know about you, but I'd rather spend that on McChickens or chicken nuggets or something. Anyway, this machine helps you squeeze juice packets, but not any juice packet. It has Darrow branded juice packets. You couldn't use any other ones, and those cost an extra $7 to use. And the worst of all, you have to be connected to Wi-Fi for this to work. If you didn't have Wi-Fi, you didn't get your juice. Talk about a bad product. And it didn't take long for people to realize you could just squeeze those packets by hand. You didn't even need the juice machine. And suffice to say, they went bankrupt. Now, why do I tell you this story? Look at the product. It's very sleek. It's very easy to use. Usability is off the charts. Tactical research probably went into making it a very easy to use product. But what's the value? Where's the user need? There was likely zero, if any, strategic research done on this product, which led to its death, essentially. And that's what happens when we focus on solely technical goals. This is the product death cycle. I'm going to introduce you to this, coined by David Bland. He's the author of Testing Business Ideas, where no one uses your product. You ask customers what's missing, you build those features, and then inevitably they don't use it, and then the cycle begins all over again. This happens quite a lot, and I'm sure Juicero went through this as well. And I'm going to introduce you to what I call the research death cycle. It's very similar. It tracks the same product death cycle, but I'm giving it the research underpinning. Right? We conduct usability to make a product easier. We fix those issues. We build features with the improved usability, and you conduct more usability. You conduct more testing. The issue with this is we're still focusing on a product that exists already. And research teams are asked to do tactical research to fix something after it's already been built. And by that, we know it's kind of too late. We can improve what we have today, but it's not going to lead to innovation. And if you want a full talk on it, I gave a keynote at the UXtweak conference there. We can see from this example of Juicero, tactical research inherently is reactive research. And we have to strive to be more proactive because that's extremely important to business. If Juicero had asked strategic questions to begin with, maybe they would have survived. Maybe they would have pivoted to something else, found value for the users. But hindsight is 2020. I think in principle, yes, we can agree strategic research is very important. It builds the foundation that every business needs to succeed. We can agree on this, yes? But this is the expectation. Oh, I love that we have all this time for strategic research. But in reality, that's not usually the case. So how do we make time for it in heavily tactical environments? Okay. Raise your hand if you would consider your team very tactical focused. Right? Those of us here today, we can recognize strategic research is crucial. But sometimes our teams, our culture, our environments are too busy to recognize it. And there's a lot of advice that focuses on convincing your team to do strategic research. But today I'm going to show you how to show them to do strategic research. And thus begins chapter 2, where I'm going to share a story of how I inspired my very, very reactive team to start doing strategic research. There are a lot of lessons in this story. So as I share the story, listen for the moments where I encounter pushback. and listen for the strategies that I use to create the environment the team needed for strategic work. Ready? Okay. When I first joined the Google Where team, I ran lab usability tests. That was it. That was my job, to run rapid research, evaluative tactical tests. 100% tactical. Like how to organize the menu, how to design the scroll be much easier on a small screen. 100% tactical. And for history, just so you know, the Google smartwatch was incubated at Google because the story goes, a designer put a phone on his wrist and thought it was, oh, we should build that. So suffice to say, there was not really strategic research done, which, by the way, I'm not saying that's dumb. I do love the spirit of building cool things, but there wasn't strategic research behind it. So when I joined the Google Where team, I did these studies, usability focused, and I would always ask a couple of questions to my participants at the beginning of our session. Have you ever heard of Google Where? Have you ever tried Google Where watches? Have you ever considered purchasing a smartwatch? Why or why not? Now, I only ask these questions as a warm-up, right? Just kind of build, just start the conversation off. I had no intention of using this data. They were purely just for throwaway, let's just warm up the participant, right? However, what I heard started to raise a huge opportunity. A lot of people said, oh, who's it for? Oh, I'm waiting for them to become more useful. I have my phone already. My phone it's pricey for what my phone can do 10 times better. And just straight up, no. Right? We have to realize that this process of building a product is quite backwards. We haven't done any strategic research to inform what users actually needed and why they would need this product. So, okay, I admit it's kind of late to start doing it, but it's never too late. It's better late than never. Remember, these are throwaway questions, but it was such a huge pattern that if I ignored these signals and just continued about my day doing tactical research, we might end up like Juicero. Or at the very least, wearable with no product market fit. This was beginning to look like the research death cycle. So I took it upon myself and thought, let me look into this pattern more. I started asking bigger questions. What is the value for users? What's this smartwatch supposed to do? For whom? Is this a Google problem? Do other smartwatch brands face the same problem? What were our gaps? And I wanted to find out. So I did some secondary research, literature searches, market research, trends research. It wasn't long for me to find articles that the wearable industry as a whole was struggling to find value. And being part of the smartwatch team, I was surprised nobody on my team was talking about this. Why were we fixing buttons? Why were we making adaptive font sizes if no one's going to buy it? Okay, we have identified an opportunity here. Who are these customers? What are the real needs, problems, motivations? What value can we bring? This was great. This was exciting to me. New big opportunity here to do valuable, impactful research. So I brought it up with the design director. Do you think I was able to get the team to focus on these questions? No. Unfortunately, I couldn't. Remember, my team wasn't focused on these big questions. We were focused on shipping, adding features, testing, lots of testing. And there were so many launch dates scheduled. And yesterday, actually, great timing, Dr. Ari Zelmano posted this. And some of the reasons that I've heard for not doing strategic work or discovery research here, I've heard it all. Oh, we don't have time. We want to be tactical. We have launches. We got to ship already. We have launch dates scheduled. Raise your hand if you ever heard these two. Now, luckily, the design director didn't say no. He just said no, not right now, because we're too busy, which is still a good sign, right? But that's the lesson here. Going from very, very, very tactical environment to a strategic research environment is going to take time. It's not an overnight thing. It was important. And something in me wanted to prove to myself that I can convince the team. So success baby here, right? Pump ourselves up. Now the question for me, and the question for many of you, you can ask, how do you get your team to start focusing on the bigger questions without interrupting the current roadmap? Well, Kevin, if this is such an important issue, why didn't you push harder? You should have pushed harder, right? This is a big use. Why didn't you push harder? Well, I thought about that. And on a prioritization scale, yes, this was a huge effort that will require the entire team to revisit the fundamentals of our product. So it's an important one, but not an urgent one. I think the team could live with scheduling this a little bit later. And that was my mission, to get the strategic roadmap onto the roadmap, the sooner the better, but at the right time. Okay. My strategy was continue business as usual, keep delivering what the stakeholders wanted. What did they want? Tactical research. But I'm going to also give them the strategic insights they needed. Every single time I will report my findings, I would include the same strategic themes over and over again. I kept telling them, oh yeah, this group of participants said the same thing. Oh yeah, just like last time, participants said the same thing. They don't care about smartwatches. And my goal was to be as repetitive as possible. Plant the seed in their heads, work my storytelling to advocate for real user needs over time. At the end of my research reports, I would always include a recommendation to my team to understand, hey, we need to start doing this deeper research. And so I did this for a little bit. When could I make the big move? When can I actually start putting it onto a roadmap? Well, I knew the current roadmap had big launches, like Google I/O Scale, right? That's Google's developer conference. Like, okay, I'll wait until after that, which was about a quarter or 3 months of planting the seed in their heads. But this time I brought friends, getting allies on board. I had constant check-ins with my manager, who was very supportive of the idea of doing strategic work. And finally, after the developer conference, I set up a meeting with my product team, including the design director. In this meeting, you might be, okay, now how do you actually do the active convincing? Well, I compiled all of the previous research and themes that I learned over the past quarter. By now, they've heard it enough times from me. They knew it wasn't just a few participants who felt this way. And so I made a strong recommendation. Hey, this has to be a roadmap, a research roadmap item for us to do. It took some time to get here, but I got the green light. I got the buy-in. And so based on my continuous discovery questions, I invited the team to see what other questions they had. Right now, at this point, you're going to invite your team, bring them along with you to do this research together. And to my surprise, my teammates had a lot more strategic questions than they did tactical ones now. We really needed to learn about our users and less about the product. I'm going to say that again. We needed to learn about our users and not about our product. We were learning so much about the product, but not really about our users. Ooh. So the team needed to see what users saw in our product, what value there was. So in the following slides, I'm going to show you how I established the research program at Google Where that allowed me to do both strategic work and tactical work simultaneously. And if you couldn't guess already, this is like literally my portfolio case study. So those of you who are writing up your portfolios, you could pay attention at this point too. So we wanted to see how people are using our product in real life. Initially, I proposed starting with 1 week because the design director wanted to see if strategic research was worth the team's time. Of course, we know it's worth time, but that's a lot of pressure. I have 1 week to prove that strategic research is going to be super impactful for the team to know about. So this program had to be quick and pack a ton of value. Nobody said strategic research had to take a long time. And to learn strategically, I had to stop doing lab usability tests. We needed to go outside of the lab. If I wanted to see people use something in real life, what are some methods we could do? Right? You would think field methods, contextual inquiry, ethnography, observation. But those methods aren't for this study because imagine someone had a smartwatch. I can't just wait for someone to use their devices naturally. That's not going to be very efficient. So this couldn't be in person. This had to be a remote study. So basically, this was remote research before the world went remote. The next best thing was diary studies. Okay, I'm not going to get into like all the details of how I ran the research, but basically, after the first trial week of this program, we got a bunch of strategic insights, but also tactical insights, things that we never could have gotten from usability studies. And this inspired questions that the team never even thought of before. And the research inspired more questions, not just from my immediate product and developer teams, but also the onboarding team, the market research team, the writing team. Strategic research can provide the confidence that your entire department can use, not just one team. And they loved the insight so much, they wanted me to do another round of this, and another, and another. And by the time I left the team, I think I ran like 14 rounds of this longitudinal study, adapted it over time, using the same procedure to even benchmark against competitors. Okay? And I found, throughout this new research effort, you might encounter new metrics that you have to measure, metrics that you didn't think of before. If you're super tactical, you might focus a lot on usability, success rates, et cetera, et cetera. But now there were other metrics that were more important to strategic thinking, which you can see on the screen here. I delve deeper into this whole story if you want to check it out. It's called Spice Up Your UX Research on YouTube. In summary, we went from very tactical world to doing strategic research, but it took time to convince the team to do that. It took a little bit of injecting over time to get them to actually do strategic research. The last time I heard from my old teammates, Googleware still uses my program to this day. So the outcome, if you ever want to set up a program like this to do strategic work and tactical work, it can be reliable and you're solving real needs. You can modify your existing methods. You can adapt them to your needs over time. And you can even use it to benchmark competitor products. We know that if you're doing strategic research, you're uncovering the underlying real user needs so that you can reduce the noise and prioritize your team's efforts and questions. This program that I did not only affected my immediate team, but it inspired the rest of Google to do better onboarding for their devices. And of course, the whole goal of me doing the strategic research is to answer the question, where's the value in this product? The original problem was no one cared for it. No one knew what the purpose was of a smartwatch. And being able to do this strategic research, I was able to actually get the team to think about value-based product instead of a feature-based product. Phew. Okay. Chapter 3. That was a story. We now know we have to do strategic work, but sometimes our environment might not allow for it. I'll recap some philosophical learnings and give you some practical tips on creating a more strategic friendly environment. So what have we learned? What have we learned about the role of tactical research as a means to do strategic research? I spent way too much time designing this slide. Feel free to screenshot it. But tactical research has strategic underpinnings. It does. I don't believe tactical research is 100% tactical, because if you ask the question why, and if you ask it enough times, you might just find that there are deeper motivations behind the actions and decisions that users make, and those just might be the budding strategic opportunities. Another great thing about using tactical research is that it builds trust instead of demanding trust. You don't have to start big, like I shared in my story. It could take time, right? A lot of people will say, well, strategic research is the future. We need to do strategic research. And I'm like, okay, well, you can't go into a room that's full of tactical reactive environment and say, we got to do strategic. No one's going to give you the time of day. So if you do it this way, you could build trust. You could actually build the buy-in. Okay. When you do it this way, you can also have immediate impact, no matter how small, right? You're tackling low-hanging fruit at the same time. Your UX and your engineering teams will love you because you're not just giving big strategies, but you're also giving real practical progress. This method, this technique of using tactical research was also passive continuous discovery. It was passive continuous discovery disguised as tactical research. Right? It really was. I asked strategic questions even when my focus was tactical. So I disguised it. I knew we had to do it. Okay, but Kevin, like, why should we disguise what we're doing? Fair question. Well, I'm telling you right now, it's easier to talk the talk than it is to walk the walk. This is one of the ways you could start shifting your team to more strategic impact. Okay. So some takeaways that we got from the story. There's the principle versus the practice. The principle is that yes, we should have done strategic research first, but in reality, as I'm sure a lot of you have experienced, that's just not how a lot of teams start their development. So poke around, explore. Don't ignore the signals and blind spots. Even if it's not within your scope, start asking some exploratory questions on a small scale. This allowed me to identify a big opportunity and question what we're doing as a team. Metrics, right? Value-based metrics. You think it would be obvious, but we weren't thinking about value at all for the users. We were thinking, how well does this feature work? How can we get users to use this feature more? Those metrics don't matter if your users don't care about your product. So when you start discovering ways to do strategic research, you're discovering new strategies to tackle, you can identify metrics that matter. Okay. This technique is also a great example of showing and not telling. This is a great example of showing the value of strategic research because we've already built trust through tactical research. We don't have to fight for research. Next is you got to bring some allies and advocates for the ride. And this is useful for any case, not just research, but don't be afraid to ask for help. If you have shown impact to a team, they can often be motivators. They can often advocate for you for other teams to adopt research. And when more teams see, oh, that team's using research and seeing a lot of impact, we should use them too. From my story, I hope you could see that it wasn't an overnight thing. It took some time. I don't think we can expect to just drastically shift roadmaps overnight. That's the principle. We would love to do that, but in practice, not so much. And there's a quote someone told me that I never forgot. We are persuading our team through showing value, and ultimately we want influence. What I remember someone telling me is persuasion is something we do, influence is something we earn. Persuasion is something we do, influence is something we earn. So it's okay if it takes some time. Timing is important, speaking of which. And by the way, I don't think I mentioned when I did this, but I did it as a junior. It's not the fact that research was tactical or strategic that's important. That doesn't matter. Those are just labels. But rather, if you have the foresight to see what impact the research can lead to, that's what's important. Not the fact that you're a junior or a senior. And remember this story, it was at Google, one of the largest UX focused companies in the world. But the team was running all tactical research, zero strategic research. Why? Because the team was busy reacting how to make the product better, but they didn't ask the big questions. Right? Even big companies can be susceptible to this. And so, some of my clients for 0 to UX are startups, and I see the same exact thing. It's everywhere. So, stay true to the user needs, both spoken and unspoken. And what I discovered was discovery research itself doesn't take long. Convincing people to do it does. Okay. All right. I'm going to give some 5 tips, like just to summarize, 5 additional ways to carve out time to conduct strategic research. The goal is, if you're in a tactical heavy environment, we can't just say bye to all the technical needs. We can't. We just can't. We have to still do them. That's the reality. So how can we carve out time? All right. And the idea here, I want you to get across, is you can start with 10% of your time, 15%. Then you could grow to 20%. Doesn't have to be a lot. The idea is you start building trust. You start showing the team they need strategic research. Okay. The first tip I just showed you through my Google Where story. You inject tactical research. How do you do this? When do you do this? Well, if you're running tactical research, you could ask a few exploratory questions, a few discovery questions up front. And that pre-study phase is a perfect time to ask your participants. Oh, we're going to be talking about some product features today. Before we get into it, had a couple questions for you. Perfect time to do that. And this can help us start identifying problems that might not be top of mind for your stakeholders. Another way to carve out some time is to conduct some heuristic evaluations. A lot of times your stakeholders ask you, oh, just validate that. Oh, just test that. We have it ready. We have the prototypes ready. Just go out and we want to see users use it. That's not good scoping. We have to scope it better. But many times I've discovered there's so many blatant issues that we can just say through heuristic evaluation, hey, it's not ready. Just fix these things first, and then we'll put it in front of users. Right? This saves you some extra time. Third tip, you probably know this, but we have to involve our partners and get involved early. Ideally, we get included at the very beginning of our projects, at the very beginning of development, so that we can ask those strategic research questions. Hey, have you thought about this? What are the user's needs? Where did this idea come from? We can help steer the ship with strategic research. Sometimes you get, they might forget to include you in those meetings. So don't be left out. Have constant one-on-ones with your stakeholders. Align on existing or emergent product initiatives. You could lead and facilitate research readouts and sprints so that research can be the foundation for everything that comes afterwards. And best practices, you all probably know this, but involve your stakeholders throughout the research and get them excited about the strategic questions that you're asking, not just the tactical ones. Observe users, show videos, show quotes, start building the case that you've identified strategic needs for. And doing so amplifies yourself as a UX leader. Whether you call yourself a leader or not, this will amplify yourself as a UX leader. Okay. Fourth, out of, one more tip, 4 out of 5. Be future looking. And we want to carve enough time, but you also want to spend some time looking ahead. Too often we're thinking in quarters in the next few weeks, in the next quarter, but we're not looking far enough. Where would our team be in 1 year? Where would this product be in 5 years? When you're doing your yearly roadmap planning, this is a really good time to bring this up using research that you've accumulated already. So this could help us stay on top of emerging and not be blind. And finally, the last tip I have for you is establishing programs that can streamline tactical requests. What I suggested to my team, that diary study, turned out to be a program, a recurring program. I could still do tactical research outside of it, but this became my baby. It became the main focus because it could tackle both. If you can anticipate tactical research coming in, you can consider a cadence for how often those research happens. We've noticed tactical requests come in from time to time. Let's get ahead of those. We could do quick iterative bits and involve stakeholders. The other thing that I won't get into today is democratizing the research, but that's for another talk. But anyway, democratization is one other way that you could streamline requests, but that's not the topic of today's talk. If you have a question about it, I can answer it. But that's a great way to scale your research as well. All right. How are we doing on time? I hope this has been helpful so far. I have one more story and then a recap, and then we can get into Q&A. How are we feeling? Cool. So the purpose of today's talk was, if you had a reactive environment, how do you start doing strategic work? And I showed you a very clear way of doing that. But what if you had the luxury and time to just do strategic research? Why aren't you a lucky duck? I'm kidding. So I'll briefly discuss how to do strategic research without having to piggyback off of tactical research. Then we'll wrap up with some takeaways and some goodies and some Q&A. Hey, as you saw from my story and many stories I could have chosen, strategic questions can be found almost anywhere. But the most important thing isn't knowing where to look. It's about knowing the right questions to ask. Generally, data begets questions. Questions beget more questions. And my philosophy is, the more I learn, the more I realize that I don't know. The more I learn, the more I realize how dumb I am, because there's just so much to learn. And that's the beauty of research. That's the beauty of science. So, tactical research, obviously, you can find strategic underpinnings. You could look at market research, analytics, trends, gaps analysis, competitive analysis, SWOT analysis, systems thinking. Very, very important. You got to take a bird's eye view, how all your data are coming together, right? It's not, UX isn't the only department that does research. You have data science, you have business intelligence, account managers, your sales teams, you have customer experience. All these teams do research. So don't silo yourself, because you can collaborate with to come up with bigger pictures together. There's also continuous discovery applications, CSAT surveys that your market research team might be running. You could run interviews, you could do happiness tracking surveys. And let's not forget, sometimes, very real talk here, you get them from the top, right? Which is totally okay. But these are the 5 places where strategic questions or opportunities can come. All right. Let me tell you the story now. I'll tell a story of just purely strategic research. Right? It doesn't piggyback off tactical research, and how it came about and how to handle. I'm going to go into the whole story, but I'm going to share how you actually do strategic research. This story is a 0 to 1 launch I did at Uber Freight. And I'm telling you this story to show how strategic research happens outside of any tactical research. Here's the story. I was working at Uber Freight, and at the time, we started with a mobile app. And the mobile app targeted small trucking companies, right, and independent drivers. This was great. It got Uber Freight to 100 million in revenue, but there was a $1 billion market. The problem was large fleets were a mystery to us. We never touched large fleets before. It was unknown territory, but Uber Freight was like, all the money's there. Why aren't they using us? Why aren't they using us? So you can see that this a very, very business focused goal. There was no user goal. There's no user research goal here. It's just business goal. Get large fleets. Whenever you have a business goal, you have to turn it into a research goal, and subsequently, what's in it for the users. We weren't sure why large fleets weren't using the mobile app. We didn't know who they were or what their needs were. So that was my research goal. Understand large fleets. Who are they? Who are the players? What do they need? How do they make decisions? What do they do? And that's basically the strategic research goal. As you've seen, it's very foundational, very discovery based, very generative. A lot of discovery questions was needed here because we literally had zero idea. The company just knew there was a market potential. So this is a lot on this slide. I don't expect you to read it, but in essence, I used a lot of different methods to tackle this very nebulous area of product development. Remember, the goal was get large fleets. If you're a researcher, you're like, oh, okay, is this a product? Is this a process? Is this what is this supposed to be? So in essence, I had to use a lot of methods. Interviews with my sales teams, my account management team, contextual inquiries with large fleets, competitive analysis, concept testing. And as we got more validation, I could get more into the tactical questions by doing usability tests, participatory design, and surveys. And I use different methods at different phases of development. The first 2 months, as you can see here, was definitely very strategic, all strategic questions. When we learned more and more about the large fleets, I could then shift it to generative concept testing. And once we had a proof of concept, we could start getting tactical. Okay. I'm not going to get into all the details of this project, but essentially, doing strategic research helped us build an understanding of large fleets before the team built anything, which is great. It's great because the team didn't build first and tried to fit the circle into the square. But trust me, it was not easy keeping the engineers at bay. They wanted to code. They wanted to start building. And if I'm being honest, Uber Freight was pressuring me, the researcher, to go even faster because the engineers were sitting idle. And if you have engineering sitting idle, that's not good because they're very expensive. And your company is going to be like, You work on an engineer's time, not a researcher's time. So there's a lot of struggle here, here too, and here also. But I'm grateful that my team really valued putting research first in this case, because the whole team, the whole department had no idea. They were really looking to research to guide them. And if my team was like, okay, the engineers are idle, twiddling their thumbs, they got to build something. Oh, let's just build what our competitors have. It probably would not have ended well. In 3 months, we went from knowing zero about large fleets to my research inspiring the build for what these users actually needed, all based on research. So that's pretty cool. And that's how strategic research is important and how you could possibly do it without needing tactical research. Woo! I love these stories. So thank you, Merrick, for asking my experience at Google and Uber. It seems like you knew exactly what I was going to talk about today. We're almost done here. I want to finally revisit those 3 quotes that I showed at the beginning of the talk to determine whether or not they're still true. This is the first one. Remember? Strategic research is more important than tactical research. What do we think now? No. Both have their time and place. One's not more important than the other. We can't always be doing strategic research because while it's important to shape long-term plans, at some point you have to implement and build. So tactical research is needed. Different research at different stages. It's not more important, but it is important to setting the foundation. Okay? Second quote that we're going to talk about today. 10% of research is strategic, but it should be 85%. I agree. I agree with Jared Spool. Because in principle, yes, we should all strive to build deep strategic foundations early on in any development process. We can use analytics, trends analysis, market data, CSAT, continuous discovery to inform future research. That's what we all want to do. 85% of research to be strategic so that we don't have to rebuild things. But in practice, as I've seen in many companies, this is not an overnight endeavor. Yes, we want strategic research, but you can't just walk in there and say, hey, stop what you're doing, stop all the tactical stuff and let's do strategic. No one's going to listen to you. So in practice, if you encounter an environment that's super tactical, leverage the tactical research, go along with them and start injecting strategic research to kickstart strategic planning. Okay. And finally, this quote: tactical research is for juniors. No, no, don't ever think this. I've seen it enough. In fact, I was interviewing a candidate for our job, a very senior candidate, going for a manager role. And they said this: tactical research is for juniors. I'm going to do all the strategic work. I'm like, okay, I get where you're coming from, but that doesn't show me that you're a team player. And it gives this elitist vibe. It gives this like this is beneath me kind of vibe, and we don't want that on our team, at least, because our team was very small. It was just me and my manager. It's just 2 people. We needed people to roll up their sleeves. So if you think like this, it could work at big companies with lots of researchers where you could specialize. But I don't think this is a healthy philosophy. We are never too junior for strategic work, and we are never too senior for tactical work. Remember, it's not the fact that it's tactical or strategic that's important, right? I mentioned that these are just labels, but rather having the foresight to see what impact you can lead to. That's what's important. If your tactical work can lead to strategy or shifting priorities or deprioritizing things, that's arguably way more skill than it is to just say, oh, I do tactical work. So hopefully today I've talked about the philosophies of strategic research and tactical research, and also the practice of strategic and tactical research. Okay. So thank you very much. You can follow me on these socials. I'm just going to do a quick minute shameless plug, because if you liked this, like literally, I spent 5 years on creating this masterclass full of my philosophies and practices, way more in depth, 500 lessons, like over 100 hours. It's the most in-depth class in UX research that exists today. I don't make promises like that lightly. But yeah, I have people right now taking it, and some are current UX researchers who said, oh, I went through a few lessons and I realized that I even had some gaps that I didn't know I realized I have. So check out the website. Even if you're like, oh no, he's selling stuff right now. I'm not a salesperson. I built it because I saw a need. So zerotox.teachable.com/p/masterclass. If you use the code UXtweak25, you'll get 25% off. And this code expires next Friday. And if any exchange rates are too high, just email me. I'll be happy to work something out with you, because I want to make sure the education, we all get the great UX research education. That's my mission. So that's the code for you. And if you want to use the templates that I use every day at work, and some companies actually adopted my templates. So you could go to zerotx.com/templates. They're free, completely free. And yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for listening. And they'll post the links there. But happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so we are moving into the Q&A now, but thank you so much, Kevin. It's been a great talk. Love the stories, with a little bit of a foreshadowing from my side. They were great. To be honest, I think most of people who went through a UX journey were able to find themselves in the story about the overly tactical environment where everyone is just focused on reacting. No one is focused on planning because they think there is not enough time for that, and that's such a shame. So we have the questions ready for you to answer. So let's get into it right away. The first one is not a question explicitly, but I seen it in the chat as a statement, and I thought it would be a good starter for a conversation. We already have a roadmap. We only need to validate it. I think that this statement nicely encapsulates the technical focus which you discussed. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Boy, if I had a nickel every time we have a roadmap, we just need to validate it.
Yeah, it's the curse of the agile, isn't it? That they want to be so fast, they are tripping over own legs, basically.
Yes, and that's the curse of agile, the tactical heavy environments. just validate it. And I think I want to talk about the term validate because it in itself, the word has a connotation of, oh, we already know it works. I just want you to go and confirm that it works, which is slightly biased. So anytime I hear the word validate, I'm going to try to switch that term up and just say test. We're going to test it because I could equally invalidate it as well.
Yeah, because any UX researcher learns that you are not supposed to ask leading questions, and this way you are leading yourself into a result of the test which you want. You want to validate, you do not want to test. So you're basically biasing yourself with your approach from the very beginning.
Yeah. Yep. So hopefully there are some strategies in this talk that could help get your team to start thinking bigger. But yeah, this is very, very common.
Okay, so next up we have you mentioned that people are supposed to get allies when they are introducing a change, especially from the tactical to the more strategic view. And a question came focused on this. Getting allies can be challenging if you are a sole researcher. Any tips on finding non-UX allies?
Love this question. Thank you to whoever asked this. Quick note, when I go and find clients for 0-2x, if I end up with a startup, I don't assume that they know what UX means. I don't even use the term UX with them. So I don't call myself a UX researcher when I'm talking to clients, like startup clients. And that's kind of the philosophy that has worked for me. You're not pitching UX. We're pitching, we can help you solve a problem. So you speak with these allies, understand what their needs are, your stakeholders' needs, and you get down to the details. You ignore the titles, you ignore what brand of researcher we are. We're problem solvers, and that's what we're going to help them do. So if you could show the impact without using the term UX in your sentences, you'll be able to gain influence and partner up with them and show them the value. So that's my tip. If you're a sole researcher and you don't have any other UXers on your team, don't pitch UX, pitch the problem solving.
Speaking of problem solving, maybe some other positions in the company which focus on problem solving would be a great allies in this. So, for example, if the company has a customer service department where you get to talk to some of the officers, those are the problem solvers who can be your highway to the biggest problems. And if you just team up with them, I think that might ease your life as well.
Yeah, great point, Merrick. Yeah, exactly. Other insights generating departments are best friends.
Okay, so next up, I think you discussed this in a more broader manner on how to balance basically the tactical research and the strategic research. But once again, this is more focused on the cases when somebody is a sole researcher and you have deadlines piling up, the management wanting you to focus just on the tactical portion because they find it as the biggest value. How would you juggle all this up?
Yes, this is at surface level, it seems like a simple question, but I think there's a lot of depth to this because it depends on how closely you're working with these stakeholders. It depends on whether or not you can democratize some research, if they have time, how you prioritize currently. So it starts with prioritization. So I mentioned some frameworks like the Eisenhower one, but there's impact and value, what the definition of urgent means, because yeah, everyone has an urgent request, but what does it actually mean? So you're going to have to sit down with these stakeholders and say, okay, let me just compile a list. And I have a spreadsheet for myself for this. I wish I could pull it up, but I'll note down every single research request. I'm going to label it as tactical or strategic. I'm going to write down the timeline or the deadline. I'm going to write down the expected impact, or what problem we're trying to solve, what department this leads into. I'm going to write down, does this research project impact other departments? Can this research be used as evergreen research? Kill multiple birds with one stone. Sorry, bird lovers. But yeah, it starts with prioritization. What's urgent? What can you do? And you're going to have a lot of conversations about trade-offs. Hey, I'm one person. I could do, and also a big question is, I forgot to mention, is this something that we have already, secondary research, previous research that we can leverage? Is this something I need to do as a researcher, or can I democratize it to someone else? And on the note of democratization, I believe only certain tactical research, like very simple scoped research, should be democratized. But yeah, I don't want to get into that democratization topic today.
That's a hot topic which can cause controversy.
Yeah.
I know, because people are very, very passionate on both sides of this discussion.
Yeah.
And this, what I wanted to add, yes, you can democratize, but I think it's important that you need to, as you mentioned, carefully pick what can and cannot be or should not be democratized. And what I would want to follow up on the prioritization, I think that it's important that sometimes you need to take one step back to then take two steps forward, because people are always overwhelmed with deadlines, feel like they have no time for anything. But if you make the time to prioritize, as you mentioned, to discuss what should be first or what can be skipped, etc., you will then be able to use the time more efficiently than just run at the first task which is in front of you and try to complete it as fast as you can.
100%. And I'll add to that too, because when I was junior, I wanted to do everything, because I was in a position of like, I want to prove myself. As I gained more experience, that's exactly what you want to do. And even as a junior, you don't feel the need you have to take on everything because quality is better than quantity. And if you're doing the right projects with the biggest impact, exactly what Marek said, take a step back to go two steps forward.
Yeah. And it's not just that you feel like you need to do everything. When you are starting off, usually you want to do everything. You're curious. You want to do that. You want to check out that. And that's great. But you need to focus on something a little more to actually move forward. And other than that, I think that just this also picks up on the tactical versus strategic discussion, that also they want results now, they want to make changes now, and sometimes it's better to just make them later and make them accurate, as you did with the freight project with Uber. You just took your time, even though you were under pressure, as you mentioned, and there were multiple points of pressure all around the diagram, and you braved it, and then the result came. And that, I think, is majorly difficult, especially if you are not in a senior position, to be able to stand your ground, prove the worth, and then in the end lead the project to the successful ending.
Absolutely. Great points.
And not to be like a negative Betty or something, but That's just a question from me right now. Do you think that there is like a point of no return and the cases like this when the team and the companies just completely focus on the technical, refuse any suggestions, refuse um, any approaches that you might try with persuading them to pick up on the strategic research more? Do you feel like there is a point like this which can happen to you? Not you personally, but like you as a researcher.
If that exists, I have not personally encountered that yet. But I did mention I did consult startups, and they are super technical heavy. They didn't even think of strategic questions. But even through one usability test, we're able to kind of open their eyes. Oh, there's so many things we're missing, actually. So there's a moment of when we presented the strategic insights, there's a moment the stakeholders are like, do we have to start over? Like, we can't do that at this point. Versus, can we do it in phases? Like, what's priority now? What can we do now? What can we do later? And I think it depends on how we present our recommendations and our story. If we presented like, oh, y'all, this failed, your product sucks, that's just not good. That's not how you present it. You want to say, here's some opportunities, and here's what you're going to need to do to get to those opportunities. And let me help you even prioritize it. This is what you do now. This is what you do later. This is what we could plan for later. So I don't think I've encountered any teams that just say no to strategic research, because here's the underpinning process of doing good research. You involve your stakeholders throughout your projects, right? And if they get to sit in some of those calls with your customers and they see it, they hear it from this direct source, they know that you're not making it up. We are not the ones who make up the data. That these are your customers that are saying this stuff. So I haven't met stakeholders yet that ignore strategic insights.
Yeah. I think we have time for one last point or one last question, which came just now from Patricia in the chat. I have heard the fourth quote. If I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. In an attempt to challenge research before launching of a tech product, how do you respond to that?
If I had, well, first I would say Henry Ford might have said that.
Yeah.
It might not have. But anyway, facetious. So they're trying to challenge research with asking users. Well, this is a great question, Patricia, because the quote relies on attitudinal data, spoken data, right? But we also, as researchers, have to take into observational and behavior data. What people say isn't what they always do. I'm sure you've heard of that. So we have to implement some systems to make sure we're not just listening to what users say, but also observing what they might do. And that's how we researchers can best go about it. Now, with this stakeholder, how do I actually respond? I would say, yes, I would agree with them. It's like, okay, yes, I agree, because we don't want to be on the bad side. I agree with that quote. What we also need to do is make sure we get the observational data and blah, blah, blah. So that's how I would respond. It's a very diplomatic approach.
Yeah,
And
sometimes that's the best one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so all I can say is a big thank you, Kevin. It's been a really, really great talk. I think anyone who joined today, be it junior UXers, senior UXers, even people outside of the UX sphere, I think everyone learned so much. And the talk was great. And please, everyone who joined us today, make sure to check out the Zero to UX, which, if it's in the same spirit as this talk was, I think that it will be nothing short of amazing. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you, Merrick. Thank you, UXtweak, for having me today. And thank you, everyone who joined and for your questions. I'm open. If you ever need to contact me, just shoot me an email. I love helping out where I can. And if you have any feedback for the talk, or if you have additional stories, I'd love to hear them too. Cool. Thank you so much.
Oh, so we are wrapping it up for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Make sure to check out UXtweak as well if you haven't got the chance to yet. And have a lovely, lovely day. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.